Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is the fifth installment, part five of my post Karen Reed verdict and my concern about the failure of the civilian jury system, not just in this case, but in many cases. And even when they don't fail, and when I say don't fail, in other words, they come to the conclusion that I would like, but then other people think they failed. So the point being that when we should have enough trust in our civilian jury system to know that they have the ability to, for the most part, for almost all the time, because again, nothing is perfect in this world, but at least come to the proper conclusion because they understand the evidence and they have the skills and training to be able to analyze it properly, which a civilian jury does not, in spite of all their well-meaning attempts and all the effort they put in. And again, God bless the juries. I've never have anything against the jury that is in a case like this. I mean, I have pity for them because the amount of effort and energy and just the heart they have to put into this and what they have to live with afterwards. I mean, this is like, it's like being struck by lightning to end up in a case like this. And so I truly appreciate the jury for all the efforts that they put out, even if I don't agree with their verdict, because I don't think whether their verdict was the verdict I wanted or the verdict was the one I didn't want. I can't blame them for anything because they're doing the best they can, and they shouldn't even be there. It should be a professional jury. And so this 5-part series, the first part was called 12 People Off a Bus Stop, and why these people with no training end up in a courtroom. And the second part was, what was it? A jury of your peers. What exactly is that? That was part 2. Part 3 was the problem with a civilian jury not understanding the totality of evidence. And I go into exactly what that actually means and why it's so important in a trial. Fourth, I was talking about the fact that a civilian jury often just doesn't understand the way things work, how police work, how real life works. They're in there thinking that everything has to be 100% perfect or this case is no good. That's not the way things work. And that is not what you base your verdict on. You base your verdict on the totality of the evidence, regardless of whether you think somebody screwed up here or there. So now number 5, part 5 here, is that Americans, in spite of all this, oh my God, the civilian jury system is the way it has to be. It has to be a lay jury. We can't have professional jurors. The Constitution's against it, and although things could be changed, and we can't trust it. We couldn't trust a professional jury. They can be bribed and like a civilian jury can. And we trust our jury system. Oh, really? Let me tell you how much you trust the jury system. If think about this, the Karen Reed case should have been there should have been a gag order. Those defense attorneys should never have been able to appear on television. None of the information should have come out about this trial prior to the trial, during the trial. The trial should have been allowed to be held with decorum. It should have been peaceful. It should have been private, and it should have been within the courtroom. If you trust the jury so much, then there should be no hoopla around the case at all. You just let the jury go in and listen peacefully to what the prosecution and the defense has to say and come to their conclusions. Oh, but you didn't trust that jury. You did not. That's why everybody was in their pink shirts in huge quantities outside the courtroom yelling, "Free Karen Reed, free Karen Reed, corruption. She's been railroaded." You didn't trust the jury to look at the evidence. You had to convince the jury before they even walked into that jury room that there was foul play, not by her, but by the government, by the police. You had to trash all these people that you had no evidence, because you aren't the jury. Outside of the courtroom, you have been attacking so many people, saying that they killed John O'Keefe, that they covered up, that they're liars. You didn't trust the jury to do their job, so you wanted to pressure that jury, bully the crap out of them into giving the verdict that you wanted, which was a not guilty verdict. You didn't trust the jury to do their job, and you proved it with your own actions. Now, let's say the jury did find her guilty. You know what would have happened then? Oh my God. All hell would have broken loose. People would be marching in the streets. The jury didn't know what they were talking about. The jury fell for the prosecution. The jury was bullied, the jury was bribed. Somebody in the inside. I don't know what you would have come up with, the people who wanted her to be found not guilty, but there would have been huge anger against this jury. Now, what the heck? If you trust the jury to come up with the right verdict, if they came up with that she was guilty, why would you be upset? Shouldn't you say, well, I trust the jury and they must have looked at the evidence properly, and therefore they came up with the right determination? But that is not what it would have happened. All hell would have broken loose. And then guess what happens next? Then the defense team starts working on the appeal process because the jury was wrong. The jury was wrong. And the defense will go and try to say the jury was wrong because A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. They will try to get an appeal. That is within our court system. The appeal process is supposed to be that if there is new evidence that comes to light that puts in question what the jury heard, therefore then you can have an appeal and a new jury will have to come in because the old jury was, I don't know, fooled by the prosecution and the detectives. So now we're going to get the jury in there with the correct information. All right. And now that jury gets to make the determination. Second jury comes in. They find the person guilty too. Now, this should be the end of everything. You can say, well, okay, well, the defense found some irregularities and they wanted to make sure that the jury's heard everything. So second jury came in. But then guess what happens? Doesn't work again? The Innocence Project rolls in. The Innocence Project is full of defense attorneys who claim that they're helping innocent people get out of prison. That's not true. A good portion of the people they get out of prison are guilty as heck, but they get them out on irregularities or emotion. Tons of emotion. They start getting everybody riled up, and they get Facebook pages of that person's innocent. They do all this nonsense, and so they push and push and push to get this person released from prison. And a good portion of the time, it's not through the appeal system. How is it being done? Well, it's because they want to bypass the jury. That's the problem. They want to bypass the jury completely. So what they do is, I'm going to read you about what's called a conviction integrity unit, which I think has little integrity in my opinion, because I've seen this, like the case of Adnan Syed in Maryland. It's totally political. So you got a new prosecutor that rolls in who wants to make a name for him or herself. And they work with certain people. And they are supposedly prosecutors. They're usually what's called progressive prosecutors. They're trying to do right by society. And they're trying to right the wrongs of overreach of the government they don't like. And so they get together with Innocence Project of defense attorneys. And they start pushing to get somebody out of prison, claiming that stuff, that the case wasn't correct. So here, let me read you what it says here. Prosecutors' offices have systems in place like conviction integrity units. These never used to exist. To review cases where there are claims of innocence, especially after conviction. These units investigate claims of wrongful conviction. They're claims of wrongful conviction. Now, mind you, the jury convicted them. But you don't believe in the jury system, do you really? Because you're saying that jury wrongfully convicted. How are all these juries that you trust wrongfully convicting all of these innocent people? Often prompted by new evidence, which is rarely the issue, or concerns about the original case. And usually it's that there's claims like the detective didn't I think in the Adnan Syed case, the whole issue was supposedly that the detective written some notes down that there was some other possible suspect and didn't present it. Well, because again, in a real world, if you look at my last thing, how things really work, detectives get so much information in. They're not going to investigate every single shred of information if it doesn't seem to have any validity. And so so it might be in a scribbled note someplace, but what this Innocence Project does is they get a lot of students and other people together who can spend a massive amount of time going through stuff and finding something that in the real world means nothing, but in the world of let's get this looked at, and let's get people to believe that this would have been meaningful. Oh my God, let's ignore the totality of evidence that Adnan Syed killed Ayman Lee. Let's ignore that. Let's just say that, it could have been somebody else. He's out free now. Yeah, he is. And so if a CIU finds credible evidence of innocence, credible evidence. Now, mind you, the original prosecutors found that there was reason to prosecute. They found credible evidence of guilt, which is why it went to trial and which is why the person got convicted. But now some new prosecutor trying to make a name for themselves often will say, hey, I think there's some credible evidence of innocence. The prosecutor's office may take steps to vacate the conviction and seek the person's release, ignoring the entire system completely. Let's not even go back to a jury. Let's not do an appeal. Let's just say, this one person. Oh, you object to a professional jury system, like maybe having 5 professional jurors who went to jury school, and now they're going to, to be in the courtroom for this trial. You object to that because they're owned by the government. But the prosecutor who's owned by the government, if he's on your side, because now you want somebody released, suddenly that one person can override the jury. One person, and set that person free. Ayman Lee's family is not happy with the Adnan Syed case. And I've seen so many cases like this. If you go to my channel, you'll see a lot of cases where I've looked at the Innocence Project's people that they got out. And the evidence proves they were guilty as heck. And yet the Innocence Project still got them out. Sometimes they bring in scientists who bring in a whole bunch of information that isn't even accurate or true. It's a bunch of statistical nonsense that isn't even statistically correct. And they can get a governor of to suddenly say, okay, that person, I'm going to let that person go because clearly they were wrongly convicted. So one person again, a head of state can choose whether that person goes free or not. So what's being forgotten in all of this, everybody's all about the defendant, and making sure they get a proper jury trial. But the victim is dead in these murder trials. The victim has been brutalized. The victim has been raped. The victim has been murdered. The victim has been whatever they've done to the victim. That victim gets zero justice, and their killer is released. And everybody's like, isn't that wonderful? The killer's out. Yeah. Because one person outside of a jury decided, hey, this will be good for my political career. I'll let him go. And the media eats all this stuff up there. The media is in the Innocence Project's pocket. And I will say that absolutely, because it's very hard to get true information about any one of these characters the Innocence Project gets out. I have to look like 30, 40 pages of Google. Sometimes I have to try to put an appeal to try to get the actual police information, what the original police reports were, because that's not out there. They're not putting that out there. They're putting out their version of what they say happened to this person, and people are unable to find the information. So people believe what the media tells them, and Google runs the media, and so therefore whatever you see in the first number of pages on Google, you're going to say, oh my God, this person's innocent. I see I didn't kill Ayman Lee. Oh my God, isn't it wonderful? He's finally getting out. Isn't that great? And everybody gets on this bandwagon. And they believe stuff that isn't even actual true evidence. And you know why? Because the evidence was presented in the courtroom, and that jury actually found them guilty, but now you think that jury was wrong. So do you really believe in the jury system or not? And I think the answer is the American public does not believe in the jury system. They know it's ludicrous. They know it's a crapshoot, which is what every attorney will say. Prosecution and defense will say it's always a crapshoot. We're waiting like this, wondering what the jury is going to come back with. Why? Because if the evidence, the totality of the evidence is total and obvious, that jury should be out for a very short period of time. They should know by the end of the trial already what their decision is. They shouldn't need to have to battle it out for 4 days, in a private room and bully each other into coming up with whatever. So if they have to do that and everybody's on pins and needles, nobody trusts the jury system. It's a crapshoot. They're wondering, where do you think it's going to happen? Which way do you think they're going to go? It shouldn't be a question, except in extremely rare cases. But, and then if they do go this way, this bunch of people says, oh, the jury screwed up. And this go this way, oh, the jury screwed up. And then if the person gets convicted, then he rolls in the Innocence Project and the, what are they called again? The Conviction Integrity Unit, CIUs, and the political people, whatever, trying to make a name for themselves and get in good with whatever the citizens in their neck of the woods are, because they don't believe in the jury system either. And they shouldn't, but hey, the delay jury system. Let's bring in a proper methodology. Is it going to be perfect? Again, no, in the real world, nothing is perfect. But a professional jury system where people actually go to school to study criminal profiling and study evidence and study all of this stuff, and they actually learn and have some knowledge before they walk into a courtroom, where they're hired, where that's their job, and they go from courtroom to do their job, where it's not a once in a lifetime thing where they bring all their emotions in and they don't know what's going on. Let's have a professional jury system. And there's some places that have a mix of professional and lay. I don't know how that would work. I don't know how many professionals you would need. I don't go with it 100%. I think if you have 5 professionals jurors, 4 out of 5 should come up with a proper conclusion, and let the one person that's a little, 4 people against 1. I'm good with that, because I think nothing's perfect, but I think it can be better. And I think this whole concept of, a jury of your peers and they're going to, I've seen so much. It gets worse by the year. It gets worse by the year because it's more complicated by the year. With DNA and all this kind of stuff, it gets much more complicated. And on top of that, the defense attorneys have gotten so good at what they do to manipulate. I think let me see if this guy said this. I thought it was let's see if I can find this point. It says here, in my experience, defense attorneys do not want educated, informed people on juries. They want people who are easily swayed by emotion and people who do not use reason and logic. The voir dire ceremony, where potential jurors are selected and dismissed, is a farce. Anyone who's been through one knows that the plaintiff's lawyers want the lowest common denominator. I kind of agree with that. And there was a guy who wrote this, and just his opening statement, I think, is really good. As a civil trial, this guy says, a civil trial attorney, I understand better than most the dog and pony show. And this is written by a guy by the name of, let me give him some credit here, Christopher Stockwell. He's talking about a professional jury. He goes back and forth. He's conflicted on it, but I like what he opens with. As a civil trial attorney, I understand better than most the dog and pony show that a trial by jury actually is. Lawyers understand that adjudications on legal issues, such as motions and appeals, are about legal interpretations, i.e. the law. Lawyers also understand that trial by juries are about storytelling, i.e. the facts. Juries largely consist of non-lawyers, absolutely, and non-profilers and non-police investigators and anybody who has anything to do with understanding crime and facts. They consist of non-lawyers with very little knowledge of laws and how they work, or how any of the evidence works, and that's even more important to me. Therefore, the legal analysis happening during jury deliberations is typically based on how non-lawyers heard a story that was told to them, not how the facts synthesize with the laws at issue. Worse still, juries mostly consist of persons who either will do nearly anything to get out of jury duty, or those who figure attending jury duty is better than going to work, with very little legal knowledge or knowledge of crime and evidence and any of that stuff. Not a great deal of animus for the institution of jury service. I'm like, most people don't want to be there, except people who I say they're excited about, I'm going to be on a jury. It's more of they want to be famous, or they're in the reality show. They want to see how it all goes down. They're not interested in necessarily they're not worried about justice as much as the other things, And there are all the inherent biases that come along with each and every human being. Massive biases, emotional stuff, stuff that people feel about other people and how they. That's all. The biases are huge, and there will be biases with a professional jury, but way less than with a civilian jury. Uh, um, Inherent biases that come along with each and every human being. How could a jury ever produce a justifiable and objective verdict? Let me repeat the last statement. Um, how can a jury ever produce a justifiable and objective verdict? Well, the whole point is they can't. And it's a crapshoot, just depending on who happens to roll in and how much they can understand about anything in spite of their well-meaningness, and what kind of biases they have, because they're not people who are trained to put the biases aside. And that's an important thing. You do have to put biases aside. When that person, that defendant or the victim, is somebody that for whatever reasons you can't relate to or you don't like, or they're, say, different culture, or they're different politics, or whatever the heck they are, that doesn't matter. It's the evidence that matters. It's a simple thing. You got a person here who committed a crime against another person, or didn't commit the crime against the other person. The rest of it doesn't matter. It's the evidence. But a civilian jury is way more likely to have biases, personal things that they bring to the court with them, because they're not used to setting those things aside, especially for a case occasion which they've never been in before in their entire lives. So I love that. How could a jury ever produce a justifiable and objective verdict? I don't think they can. And I say, even if the Karen Read case had gone, quote, my way, and they'd found her guilty, I would have gone, oh, thank God. But it would still have been a crapshoot. And just because they found her guilty wouldn't mean they were necessarily more understanding of the evidence than not finding her guilty. I would like them to be able to understand fully, when they make that decision, fully understand the evidence. And if they fully understand the evidence, then I'm confident that, okay, that verdict is made not on guesswork, but on knowledge and experience and training, and without emotion and without subjectiveness. I would be happy with that. But either way this case had gone, I would have been happier if she had been found guilty. But it wouldn't be because I thought the jury was necessarily more right than they are because they found her not guilty. Because, yeah, it's the whole system just is nonsensical to me. So that's why I'm doing these. That's why I did these 5 shows. Is not because I haven't, I'm all bent out of shape about the verdict. I'm not happy with it, but I'm not like overly emotional about it. I'm a profiler. I do lots and lots of cases. I'm here to educate detectives. I'm here to educate the public, educate criminal justice students. I'm here to educate on criminal profiling and how you look at evidence and analyze. I don't have. I'm not obsessed with one case and have any. That's the case I'm into. That's not what I'm about. So I will sleep tonight fine. I'll wake up tomorrow morning normal, because this is my profession, and I didn't put all of my heart and soul into this one case. I think it's unfortunate. I think John O'Keefe did not get justice, and I think Karen Read got away with some really poor behavior, and that ended up getting a man killed. And I think, but all I can say is I think this is one more example of why the civilian jury system is not the best system, in spite of everybody's claims. We have the best system in the world. I don't think so. I think it's going downhill every day. So those are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed. If you stayed through all these 5 segments, I hope you got something out of them. I am not going to comment back on the comments below. A lot of times I try to, but I have been receiving so many vicious comments that I just don't even want to get involved, because people can't be polite. So I'm not going to. I'll let you know. But I would request that people who do put comments below, be polite, be nice. Just because somebody disagrees with you or you disagree with me Doesn't mean you have to be rude. Doesn't mean you need to be insulting. And so try not to do that, because it tells everybody more about what kind of person you are than the person that you're attacking. So anyway, thank you for being here. If you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. Check the playlists, and this will probably be the last I will talk about this case, unless it'll probably, well, it won't show up with the Innocence Project because she wasn't found guilty. If she had been found guilty, I would assume the Innocence Project would have taken this case up. I don't know if there's going to be civil cases or whatever, but I will hopefully move on to other cases that I can help you understand, and leave this one behind. Thanks for being here.